evening, everybody. My name is Emily with Small Furry Games and with the Small Batch Game Publishers Group on Facebook. Welcome to our first ever little live chat where we're going to talk to other designers and connect and talk about things that will help indie designers like us work smaller and smarter and simpler and in more sustainable ways to get our games out there in the world. If you are not part of the Facebook group yet, you can check it out here at this link below, where we're using a new kind of software today. So I hope that my sound and my video is looking great. If you have questions during the broadcast, you can leave a comment wherever you're watching this. If you're on YouTube, if you're on the Facebook group, if you're on the Facebook page for Small Furry Games, and we can actually pop them up and look at them while we're talking with Chris today. So that'll be kind of a cool feature. Today we are talking with Chris Rossetti. Chris has run multiple profitable Kickstarter campaigns with his games through his company Rampage Games. He also runs an Etsy store. He uses the Game Crafter. He's got a craft fair booth that he manages, lots of different ways to sell his games. He's also a PhD candidate in accounting and a personal trainer and a husband and a father, and he's got a lot going on in life, and he still manages to do all this. So I thought he was a great guest to bring on for our first live chat, and we're excited to talk to him and learn more about him and what makes him Chris and what makes Rampage Games, and to talk a little bit about tips that might be helpful for all of you out there who are trying to do this too. So everybody, please welcome Chris. Hey, Chris.
Hello. That was a warm welcome.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Tell us a little bit about who you are for those who don't know you.
I am Chris. I am the founder of Rampage Games, but I do wear many hats, like you've said. My career outside of gaming is in accounting. Right now I'm pursuing my PhD. I'm also I guess relatively new dad. I have a 2-year-old son and I have another one on the way due in July. And I also little side hustles here and there besides the game design. I'm also a personal trainer, a real passion for exercise and helping people with their fitness goals.
Very cool.
And tons of other hobbies too, but I always keep them busy.
Oh, yeah. Very cool. Tell us a little bit about Rampage Games. When did this start? What's your kind of vision and goal as a game designer?
So my very first time designing a game was a collectible card game in high school. At the time I was playing like Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon with my brothers, and I wanted to create my own, but I wanted to do it differently. I wanted to do like a real world kind of trading card game. And so I designed it in high school, and then me and a buddy, like 1 or 2 years into college, this is back 2009, so we're talking, 13 years ago, we're like, well, let's see if we can sell it, right? And at that time, I had no idea what the indie gaming market was. I had absolutely no idea. And you got to realize this wasn't too far after like the internet started getting big, right? Yeah, I think 2009. I mean, the Game Crafter had just started, right? And you can see how far it's gone now.
Yeah.
And so we designed it, and then we had trouble getting into the community. We knew we had to have organic growth, and so we talked to my business partner and I at the time. We were like, well, maybe we have to design more games, and I'd never done that before. And then one game happened, and another game happened, and the Game Crafter started doing contests. The next thing you know, Rampage Games has grown to what it is today. So I kind of had humble beginnings with a trading card game, and now I can't even count how many games I've designed.
Yeah, well, my next question was, tell us a little bit about your games, maybe just a few of them. What are some
of the so there's the one that started the company, which is a collectible card game that I'm still working on today. I think it has 600 unique cards right now. And then a couple of the other games that kind of started the company too, like Zombie Road, Brace for Impact. Kickstarted a couple of those. I think I'm on Kickstarter number 9. I think all of them have funded. But I will say that a lot of the inspiration for these games has come from the Game Crafter contest, because it kind of gives you a direction to design for. But
and the constraints, right? The time constraints, sometimes the component constraints, all those
right.
Speaking of, you're judging an upcoming contest, right?
Yes, the Choose-Your-Own-Path Contest. Yeah, so I also did the Mint-In contest, and I knew when I did the Mint-In contest, a small package game like that with a large, I think it was a $25 limit, I knew there were going to be a ton of entries, and I kind of wanted to do a really niche theme for my second contest, and this is obviously a very niche theme. I've seen a lot of discussion in chats and stuff, that this is a big challenge. So, am I expecting a lot of entries? No, but I'm sure the entries that are entered are going to be top notch. So I'm really looking forward
Yeah,
to it.
it's going to be a big task to put together an entry, but it'll be quality over quantity probably. Definitely. So tell us a little bit about Rampage Games on a sort of a big picture level. What is your goal long term? Why games? Why are you putting them out in the world? Why does it all matter? And yeah, what are you hoping to
So
accomplish?
the mission that we so there's the mission that we tell customers, and then there's like our own personal mission as the owners of the company. And I'll start with the owners of the company. We wanted this to be a passion and not have it feel like work. So we said a long time ago that if this was no longer fun and it felt like a job, then we weren't going to do it anymore. And luckily, since 2009, it's always stayed fun. Like, I
That's
know it
awesome.
probably sounds funny, but when I'm self-manufacturing 500 games and applying stickers to tins,
Oh
I
yeah, it's got to
enjoy
be
that.
fun.
That's fun. That's fun for me
Yeah.
because I like the hands-on, right? And then I guess for a mission that we were trying to align, which surprisingly it, engages a lot of people at craft fairs, is that when they first see our booth, they think we're video games and they don't want to come near. And then when they
Hmm.
get closer, they kind of see some tangible products like on the table spread. And so we've kind of tailored our mission to say that we're trying to encourage old-fashioned around the table gaming with actual social interaction rather than kind of the video game thing that's going on. And at least that was more targeted based on the conversations we've had with patrons that they for whatever, I'm not trying to bash on video games because there's a place for them, but like when they see their kids playing video games stuck to the screen, they never liked it, but then they're like, oh, I could actually play this with my kids or my
Yeah.
grandkids. And
Connect.
exactly.
Very
So
cool.
that's kind
I
of the
like that
mission.
you. I like that you have a mission sort of on the business side. Like it's got to be fun.
It's got to be
And that
fun.
you also have like the customer or the patrons, I guess you call them, the facing mission of helping them like connect and gather around the table. That's pretty
Right.
cool. Somebody on Facebook is asking, what is the name of your trading card game and how is it going? Is it still
So
available?
the, what and how's it going? So it was originally called Countermeasures, CCG, and now it's Frontline Global Warfare. Um, and yeah, like I said, it has 600 unique cards. We're still tweaking it. We got a website that we're trying to build. It's constantly growing. We use public domain images, which makes it different. So there's no fantasy art. It's all real world stuff. So there's like helicopters, ambulances, like trade agreements. It's just basically you take the world society as it is today, like the modern society, and you turn it into a trading card game. That's kind of the direction we go. And there's really nothing else like that on the market. So, but we just have to get
Cool.
it out there.
Yeah. What's the name one more time?
Frontline Global Warfare.
Frontline Global Warfare. What's the best ways to get information about that? Is that BGG or your website
There
or?
is an old version on BBG that was actually an entry in the big box contest on the Game Crafter.
Okay.
Um, Other than that, we have a whole new version that we're overhauling at the moment, so it's not available for sale, but it will be shortly, hopefully within the next year.
Cool.
So
Cool.
I saw
We've got
another question.
a comment here from Edward about building community and marketing, but I want to back up just a little bit to the actual like manufacturing project process
Okay.
for you making the physical games. Right, we got the games, and
Yes.
then we're going to get them out there. Which I mean, there is a building of a following that happens sort of before that, or sometimes you're pre-selling your crowdfunding. But let's talk about the stuff. Right, the little things that you say you're hand assembling. What does that look like to you? Because we're used to seeing people, ordering like a minimum order quantity from China and getting shipped over and dealing with fulfillment and sort of this traditional Kickstarter model that we see a lot in places like BGDL. What does it look like for Rampage Games and how is it different?
So the first thing I want to say is the only way that this is doable is if your time, for me, it's fun. Does that make sense? Meaning, if you're going to go the self-manufacture route, there's a lot of time invested in it. And if you're gonna equate your time to like an hourly wage that you would have to pay yourself, it's probably not going to pay off, if that makes sense. But if you're doing it
Right.
as a passion, then your time is fun as it is, right? So then you don't have to equate that. So just put that out there first. Um, but second, by manufacturing yourself, you can find different sources for different products. and I'll use one example. This is not to throw the game crafter under the bus, but like if you went and you got a tin, like a mint tin developed by them, one-off copy, I think is $4.74, right? Plus the game handling fee of 89
I love that
cents.
you also have prices above game crafter things
Yeah. Well,
memorized.
I work with them so much, right? But
Yeah,
that's great for print on demand, but that's also it's relatively expensive, right? Whereas I
yeah.
can source my tins. I have different sources, so that I always have backups, right? So I always have 2 or 3 backups for my sources, which works out for Kickstarter. And I can get my tins for 50 cents a piece, and then I still use the Game Crafter to create custom mint tin stickers, which are roughly 12 to 25. I forget what the breakdown is, but about 25 cents a piece. So now you have a tin that's less than $1, but now you have to self-manufacture it. But now the tin's less than $1, so you just saved $4 right there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's other places where you can get like bulk dice. Like I think I linked on one of the
Yeah,
things
there's
that
a
you
great
sent.
stream on the group about
Right.
sourcing parts that I'm sure we'll continue to add to. So you can check that out on Facebook if you're on Facebook. Join that group because there's little streams that we're adding every once in a while. Like, let's talk about parts. Let's talk about
Right.
where to get art. Let's talk about where these things. And people are just dumping links that I know I'm going to go back to time and time again to find things.
A lot of them I've used. Yeah, so there's lots of different places, but what adds up over time is when you're picking and choosing from these different places, and then you come and combine it. You can buy them in bulk. You can get on a per unit basis a lot cheaper, and then you're doing the actual manufacturing, which is saving the labor, right? If you consider it fun, and then you put it together, and then you get the personal touch, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like love goes into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
and
And you're
then
right. Like the game crafter is great if they're doing a lot of that work that you don't have to do. But if you're just talking about acquiring a mint tin or acquiring a die or acquiring that little wooden piece, it's nice to be able to sort of go straight to the source. And also you don't have that, oh no, when you get that email that says your part is out of stock and you don't
correct.
have control about whether it's going to come back in. So I like that. I like your hybrid approach, sort of like getting this mint tin stickers over there. And I'm working on a Kickstarter for preparing for a Kickstarter for a game this summer. And one of the things is I think I'm going to do all the printing with the Game Crafter, but I'm going to be hand assembling like the little drawstring bags with the
Mm,
wooden parts and then either
yep.
sending them to them and putting them in or figuring out a way to sort of marry those two approaches together to make 100 copies and get them out because it's a Christmas game by Christmas.
Hmm.
So trying to figure out how that all works. So you've got things like cards, you've got things like dice. Is there anything unusual or what's kind of the most complex game that you've sort of hand manufactured so far?
So Galaxy Dice was a fun one I did with I published David Shepard. So I've dabbled a little bit in publishing others' games too, which is a unique challenge I think as a designer because now you have to factor in the thoughts and opinions of. At least I like to incorporate the thoughts and opinions of the designers that you're publishing. With
Yeah.
Galaxy Dice, we had custom tokens, we had custom printed dice, and we had foil cards before the Game Crafter
Oh,
offered foil cards, and it was in a larger tin, like a 6x4 inch tin with holographic stickers. So like those are all premium parts that we had to source, and we did a lot of research to find. So that was probably one of the most complex that
was
we've
it fun?
developed. Oh yeah, it was very fun and very pretty to
Good.
look at. Yeah, yeah, no, it's really cool when you get in some of those really off the wall products. I remember from my 1159 campaign, which was a Minton campaign, one of our best campaigns, we had a lenticular scorecard. It's one of the ones that you change the angle you look at it and it changes the image. That was one of our
Oh,
stretch
like a
goals.
hologram sort of thing.
Yeah, so you like depending on how you looked at it, and so the way we did it, because 1159 was like a
Wow.
doomsday clock. You had 1159, and there was like a cityscape, and then when you turned it, it turned to 12 o'clock, and then it was a nuclear bomb going off. It was really neat.
What? That
Yeah,
sounds pretty cool. So that's 1159, which I've seen on Board Game Geek, I think.
yeah,
That
that's
one
the only
shows up
one
for you.
that's rated. You mentioned
That's
that
the
the
big
other
one.
day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's the one
yeah.
that pops up on the top.
Yeah, that was our highest backer count, I think. So just to let everybody know, a lot of our Kickstarters, I would say are modest success if you were to compare it to all Kickstarters, but I'm right in that zone of small batch publishing where most of my campaigns typically have between 100 and 500 backers. That's kind of the sweet spot, which is
Hmm.
also good for self-manufacturing because then you're not really in over your head either. As much as
Yeah.
I would like to fund thousands of copies, I think the growth has been good
Now, so do
And
you put a cap on the Kickstarter? Do you say I'm only
no.
going to make 500 of these, or you just let it go? And if it does do well, then you would think about if you sold
So
10,000 copies or something, you would go
I have a
a different
backup
way for
plan. So this
fulfillment.
is something to keep in mind.
Nice.
If you
Okay.
were ever to do self-manufacturing and you start seeing your backer counts go up, you can create new pledges with different delivery dates. So if you
Really, I didn't know
have
that.
an estimated delivery date of November, when you get to 500 copies, like I can only make 500 by November, then give yourself an extra month and make a new pledge, same price, but
New
say it's
tier.
deliverable in December, right? So you're
Yeah.
rewarding the people who backed early. The people who backed late are still getting it for the same price. You just need more time to manufacture.
Right. Yeah. I think that's
Yeah.
a great idea. And that's what I'm doing with Bah Humbug, the thing that I'm working on for Kickstarter right now, is that
Mhm.
I have enough wooden pieces and drawn string bags and everything on hand now that I can make 100.
Mhm.
And then I just need to finish up the rule books because there's 12 different games in there, so we're working on that, and then get that printed, and then I have them because I wanted to have them before I launch, so I know that I can tell these people, yes, you're going to have
You
this
get it
game
by
by
Christmas, right?
Christmas.
Yeah.
Exactly. But then there'll be another tier that's like, okay, you want to back the game, but maybe you don't need it
Yeah,
right
I'm
away.
willing to
Then
bet.
we can kind of go beyond there.
I'm willing to bet based on what I've seen, you're gonna go over 100 copies.
I'm sure we will too. I like to play it safe. I'm not an accountant, but I definitely like to play it safe. When I launched the PNP back in December, um, I was basically I had all the art assets, and I was thinking about doing this as a Christmas game, and it got to like the beginning of November, and I was like, I'm not gonna be able to do this physically, but I already have the stuff. I can make a print and play game pretty easily, and then that just is like a boost to fund the rest of the campaign. So I ended up bringing
Mhm.
in something like $1,500 with just the
Yeah,
print and play
and
with
print
the
and play,
files I
that's
had
that's
already,
yeah.
and it was a great way to dip my toes into what is this thing, what is it like to manage a Kickstarter? Which it was actually a lot of work, I found, just communicating with backers, posting updates, getting the page to look good. And this is like no quotes for manufacturing yet, none of that other stuff to worry
Mhm.
about. So I was really happy that I had just the month of December to figure out, like, oh, this is what the process is. This is how you get a pre-launch page. This is how you promote it. And then I said, if I can get 50 people to follow it, I'll launch it. And if I sell 50, I'll be happy. And I got 50 followers, so I launched it, easily hit 50. I think it has like 250 backers or
Mhm.
something like that.
Mhm.
And that was just all organic. I was like, what can I do without any money on marketing at all? So now I have that as sort of a litmus test, and I have a little following. And some of those people have made the
Yep.
game, which is just such an honor to see other people make your game. You can put it up on BGG, it gets some ratings out there, and your game actually exists as sort of a real thing, without having
Yeah.
to spend a bunch of marketing.
Everything.
Speaking of
Yeah.
BGG, somebody's asking, do you think at all the lack of BGG ratings, etc., hurts you
No.
much at all as a small
No, it
publisher?
depends on who your audience is, right? So I would say a lot of the times where I'm selling these copies are on Etsy, who don't even know BGG exists,
Right.
for the most part, or at craft fairs, which they don't know either. Unless you get, sometimes I'll come across really hardcore gamers, and they will actually look it up. But the lack, I think, I'm trying to, I don't know how to say this. I think the lack of reviews on Board Game Geek isn't as big of an issue if you have other sales channels, if that makes sense. Like for
Yeah, if you
example,
don't have all your eggs in one basket.
yeah, so like I don't get a lot of sales from my Kickstarter, like like the link that says buy now.
Hmm.
You can link people who have missed the campaign to come and buy the game. I don't get a lot from that, at least from where I'm tracking where sales are coming from.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't think a lack of ratings, as long as you have a few. I think if you have a few and you're
Yeah, so it
sitting in that
doesn't look
sweet
like just
spot
a
between like
draft
5 and
post.
7, because there's people on Board Game Geek that will just give you a 1 star for no reason. So don't sweat
Yeah.
the ratings too much. At least I've found. I still
So
have
so
success
rate
even without it.
yeah, I think it's, and we tend to think like wherever we hang out and the board game group that we hang out with is like all gamers everywhere, and there's so many different segments,
Oh yeah,
right? Even just
absolutely.
like there's a Discord, like the hardcore Discord type people, and then there's the people in the BGDL
Mhm.
Facebook group, then there's the people who are like I've talked to a lot of like homeschool parents recently. Like there's a huge board game market there, but they're not plugged in at all to these sorts of channels, but there's
Right.
other ways to reach them. So let's talk a little bit. We'll get to Edward Taylor King's question. As a small publisher, what are the best ways to build a community and a following? Do you focus on online presence only, or also visit cons, etc., etc.?
Okay, so I would say I probably taken the uncommon path of not marketing at cons, and I'll explain that in a second. But the way that I grew my following was by starting small, kind of humble, and getting a product that I thought was decent on Kickstarter. And the other thing too, and I think I have to, this is kind of a caveat, is that there was a golden age of Kickstarter for, and I don't want to discourage people, but there's a golden age of Kickstarter for indie designers. And now it's really turned into like a pre-order for those big companies.
Yeah, there's so
So
many of these imaginary like hurdles that you have to have this many followers,
yeah,
and you have to have this many
yeah,
video reviews. You have to have there's all these like the 10 commandments of your Kickstarter that you always see. And anytime anybody asks about running a Kickstarter, they get this rundown. And I just can't imagine that some of these new people aren't just like running away screaming, saying, I can't do that. I don't have, $10,000 to put into my
right.
game before I maybe raise hopefully $10,000 and then some more.
So what I did is I started small, and I just hoped that my first campaign would at least fund. I think I had a $5,000 goal. I ended up with 117 backers or something, or 130 backers, something like that. And that was my first round. And then I made sure this is where you keep your customers and your backers, is you have top-notch communication and top-notch customer service just on that small campaign, and just service those 130 people like they were like your favorite relatives, and that's going to gain you trust. And so when your next campaign comes, there's going to be a lot of those backers that don't even necessarily read your campaign. They're like, I know he does good stuff.
Yeah, back.
I'm going to back. And that is going to organically grow your base. I know, like for example, I purposefully set my I have a bunch of golden rules for Kickstarter. I don't know if we're gonna have time to get to them today, but I can totally go over them. But every single campaign that I've funded, I've delivered 4 or 5 months early from my estimated
That's
ship,
awesome.
right? So just
Especially
having that,
today.
exactly. But you
Even
can
delivering on
set it up
time
that
is an
way.
accomplishment today. Yeah.
But you can set it up that way. When you do self-manufacturing, you're in complete control. When you do self-manufacturing, you only make enough that you need, right? And then you can ship USPS and stuff will get out, right? You're not dependent on anybody, right? So you have that control to be able to do it. But I would advise start small, but go over the top with your customer service, and then organically people are going to talk about you and the quality that you provide, and then it'll grow. Because I'll tell you, I couldn't get to where I am now if I hadn't started in the past. If that makes sense. It takes time to grow that organically. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to be worth it in the long run if you put in the effort.
So where do those names go? So you have a whole bunch of people who backed your Kickstarter after your Kickstarter. If you haven't run a Kickstarter before, and this is just my limited knowledge, after you do that, you can download a spreadsheet that's got email addresses or whatever you've put in that survey, right? Do you then contact those people and ask them to sign up for your email list or your Facebook page, or what is sort of the sales funnel, if you will, of back to Kickstarter, now what? Because I think according to Kickstarter, you can't just add those people to your email list, right? There's a process.
So the trick is on your survey, just say, would you like to be added to my newsletter?
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, just do that. And then BackerKit is kind of a gray area. Like if they sign up for BackerKit, they have this thing called BackerKit Launch that compiles. It's like a gray area of ethics about using their emails. But I did that, and I just made sure when I sent out my newsletter that I said, this is because you backed a Kickstarter. If you do not want this, then please unsubscribe, and I apologize. But this is way more streamlined, because what you can do on Kickstarter is you can update your prior backers within the campaign that they backed. But when you have like 8 or 9 campaigns, and some of those backers have backed like 6 of them, they're going to get 6 different emails. And so I had this golden rule that I would only contact the most prior Kickstarter and not spam everybody. But then if you're launching a mint tin campaign and you don't always do mint tin campaigns, then you should be contacting the prior mint tin campaign, because that's your audience. And not like your sci-fi game that you just launched, if you know what I mean. So it just made sense.
So you've got segments, actually. You've got a community, and you've got sort of loosely anyway segments of ideas of, these are my sci-fi gamers, these are my mint tin gamers, these are
So that's another strategy. I can go to it real quick. Is that with this organic growth, so a lot of designers choose a niche and just design within that niche, and I took the opposite strategy, and I designed games all over the place. So I have a very wide audience, if that makes sense, of different tastes. So I know I'm going to get some of them no matter what I do, if that makes sense.
You'll have your loyal people that just buy everything.
Right. And it means that I can design what I want to design instead of having to stay within a certain lane, if that makes sense.
And it also means you're not chasing that audience.
Right.
You're not having them, you don't have them on a leash saying, where do we want to go? Where are you going to take me? You're saying, this is where I'm going. You want to come with me?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's a much better approach. So just in terms of like numbers, because I know you're accounting guy, your audience, what do you have for an email list? What are your stats, so to speak?
Yeah, I would
How
say
many
mine's
followers
not.
do you have?
Yeah, mine's not even that big. I think on my email, I'm a little over 1,000.
Okay.
Right. And if you look at my past campaigns, like it's between, like I said, 100 and 500 backers.
Yeah.
So um,
Slow and steady.
yeah, but I kind of like it that way. I would love to have a campaign that raises 50,000, but I would
Yeah.
say I just make sure that the campaigns I run, I treat the customers that do choose to back unbelievably well, and they stick around. I have tons of repeat backers, tons.
Yeah.
And I think so you
And I
just
think
have.
that was the most rewarding thing for me as a first time Kickstarter campaign runner, project creator, I guess you would call
Yeah.
them, was we sort of are programmed these days to be like to see things like, oh, there's 71 likes on that photo, like that's a lot of likes, maybe, or 1,000 likes, whatever, but we lose touch of how many that really is. And
Mhm.
when I would go in every few hours during my campaign, because it was only 12 days, because it was 12 days of Christmas thing, and I would just message everybody within about 12 hours saying, hey, thanks for backing the campaign, and give them some little note or something. But I'd actually type in hello Maria and something like that, and it
Mhm.
surprised me how long that took. Like 250 people is a lot of people
Takes a
when you
long
actually
time.
think about them as individual people. But it was also, I thought, one of the most rewarding parts of it to see, like, this is a person. And sometimes they'd write back and say, oh, I'm so looking forward to bringing this, and sharing it with my daughter, or whatever it might be. And you get those stories, and that kind of feeds into what you were talking about earlier. It's fun. You're not
Mhm.
just mailing out a bunch of stuff to a bunch of numbers. You're actually seeing names. You're actually seeing people. You're actually building that community, which is pretty cool.
Exactly.
Um, so Kickstarter. Let's talk about. You want to talk about Etsy or the Game Crafter or Craft Fairs? You pick. Who you want to
Yeah,
talk
I
about
can do
next?
Etsy first because I just
Okay,
jumped into
let's
Etsy
Etsy.
last August. So Etsy was kind of a new realm for me, but I had a bunch of old, well, I don't want to say old, but like leftover Kickstarter stuff that I wanted to move because I knew I would be moving in a couple of years. My wife was sick of seeing it in the garage, just sitting there. So I was like, okay, I have this product and I can sell it. Let's see if I can do Etsy because Etsy has a built-in community. Starts off really slow, but what was interesting is in the first 5 months, so from August to December, I sold about $500 worth of product.
Nice. Now,
In
is
the
this
next,
games, or this is stuff left over from manufacturing games, or a
both,
mix?
both. So
Both. Okay.
about half and half. So half are games, half are tins and tokens and pieces to sell off. And then in the next 3 months, so January to March, I did like $600 worth of sales. And then in April
Nice.
alone, I did $700 worth of sales. And now, where are we
We
at
like
in
that
May?
trend.
Yeah, we're like in
Yeah.
May right now. We're not even halfway there, and I'm already at $300 or $400 worth of sales. So it's growing fast.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I find about like Etsy and those sorts of things that are, if you're using a service like Fiverr to find artists or things like that, these sites that are more person to person. Once you find something that you like, you go back to that person, because there's so many sort of anonymous, nameless things on the internet where you can find stuff. But once you find like somebody with a face, or that wrote a little note and actually said thank you
yeah,
about something that you purchased, that works. That gets people kind of hooked to coming back. So that's cool to see, literally, like that little staircase of growth in your audience in Etsy. Very cool. So you're selling games on Etsy, and you're selling like game parts and
yeah. So for the most part,
exclusively to
I
Etsy.
sell my games, and then I have leftover tins that I would sell my games in, but I also make them available. That's a popular product. And then it's really funny with Galaxy Dice. I needed about 9,000 tokens, but it was cheaper to buy 10,000 rather than 9,000
Yeah,
because of the
sometimes
the
that happens.
cutoff, right? And so I had like 1,500 extra tokens just sitting around and not doing anything. And so I decided to start selling them, and they're one of our best selling
Nice.
products.
So do you have
A
a
little
little
stuff like that.
warehouse, like
It's my
for
garage.
fulfillment purposes?
It's my
Your garage.
garage. Yeah.
So you do.
Just
You
a
have like a
shelf.
shipping area and
There
a
is. Yeah,
shelf area.
there's a
You do all
folding
that
table
stuff.
that's open up. I have a scale. I have my tape. I have my stacks of boxes for shipping. And then on the other side of the garage are shelving units that hold all the games and the materials. Yeah, it's pretty organized. I'd say I'd be pretty
Yeah,
proud of
that's
myself.
pretty cool. Now, how many games do you have? Because I've talked to a lot of people who have run Kickstarters, and they're like, I have 300 games here, and I still have to
No,
sell them. And
every
nope,
Kickstarter I've run
no back
has
that.
been to buy just enough to sell, um, to fulfill the Kickstarter campaign. So all the
Wow,
copies that I'm selling right now are me buying extra stuff to resell the games, if that makes sense. So like,
nice.
sure, I had a few extra. Like it went with 1159. I made enough that I had like 30 or 40 left over, but I didn't have
Sure,
hundreds.
sure, manageable. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so
Yeah,
you
because
sell
I
those
think that's
units off.
probably that burns a lot of people out too. If they do, if
It's
they, especially if
tough.
they spend a lot of time on one game, they do a big Kickstarter, they order 1,000 copies, 400 of them are spoken for, and they have 600. Well,
No, thank you.
that's got to feel, that's
Could
got
take
to
you a
not be
decade.
fun. That's
Yeah,
gonna
it
be
could take
like,
you
I
a
want to go
decade
to
to
the
sell
next
them.
design, but I have to work now. I have to be a marketer and a
Yeah.
salesperson to sell all this stuff, and I'm not a game designer anymore. If that's what you want to be, or I'm not a publisher, I can't find something new to share with the world because I've got this stuff that's weighing me down.
Yeah, and a lot of times when you do these overseas manufacturing um, fulfillment things, and you have to order an MOQ of 1,000, you're typically with the Kickstarters, you're not in a profit position. You have to sell most of those units to get your money back, if that makes sense. At least
Mm-hmm.
that some of the designers I've worked with is that it's hard to, especially if you just fund the campaign.
Yeah,
Um,
and if you've already paid for a bunch of art that goes in that, if you
yeah,
are not exact about your shipping costs, all kinds of stuff can just landslide.
I'm just trying to get my Etsy. Do I post it in the comments? Where
You can
can I post in
share or
comments?
just post me in the send it to me in the private chat, and then I can pop it
Yeah,
up in a tab maybe.
someone asked
Yeah, because
for
I'd
it.
love to scroll through. Because I was surprised when we were talking on the phone last week. I popped it up. I was like, wow, you have a lot of stuff in here. Okay, let me see if I can share this. We're
Tips and
learning.
warnings regarding Etsy. They fee you to death. I'm just jumping ahead here.
Fee you to death. Okay, yeah,
They
go
fee
for it.
you to death. Yeah, so tons of fees. Like they just up the fee, so it's 6.5% Etsy fee, and then there's the 3.5% plus 25 cents transaction fee, and then if you want to be prominent, you kind of have to offer free shipping, which is over $35. So that is going to cut into your profit. And then if you get any offsite revenue, which means that they market it on your behalf on like Google and stuff like that, they take a 15%.
Wow. So how many do you have a way of determining like how much stuff you're selling just organically and through
Yeah,
your
they tell you.
promotions and search
Or
results versus
actually,
theirs?
offsite ads isn't that much. Um, Most of this is organic, and a lot of it is repeat customers. So like I have certain people that use me as their primary tin source.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Kind of once somebody gets to know you and has a good experience, they come back.
Yeah, and I do little touches. Like I put in a business card that says like, "We knew you were cool. Thanks for backing the Mint Pin guys. Here's 10% off. Use code Minty Fresh next time you come."
Nice. Oh, now we all have the code. We have the code, everybody.
Yeah, you
Write
can
that
use
down.
Minty Fresh. That's totally fine if you guys want.
Minty fresh.
What is this? I
Selling
left
it.
Etsy years ago because of the fees. Oh, did I miss? Oh, did you want to show? It looks like Catherine was looking for.
Oh, yep, Catherine. Sorry, this is my ADHD trying to keep track of
Was looking
all
for
the stuff.
the
Yeah,
craft
that's
fair
good.
images. It's a good
Okay, left
thing to.
Etsy years ago because of the fees. Hated I missed
Yeah,
this
the
all this
fees.
stuff. No,
The
we
fees
didn't.
are
I'll
tough.
pop those up. Yeah, okay, so let's talk about since Kat is here and she asked, we talk about craft fairs, ta-da! And she said earlier she would love to see photos. So I have to share my screen again in a
So,
different
full
tab because I don't have
disclosure,
two
this is
monitors right now.
pre-COVID. We've had a few marketing changes with regards to our logo. So that is the old logo. This was back in 2015 at uh, Boston Fig Festival
So
of
what are we
Indie
looking at
Games.
here, sort of left to right? Looks like we got
So
two
digital
games.
prophecy is like a binary code, like number prediction kind of party game type thing. And then on top of the table and on the left hand side is Aurora, which I kickstarted back in October. It was a finalist in one of the Game Crafter contests. And then I have Iron Horses, which cool thing with Iron Horses. So I have never run a campaign for Iron Horses. It has strictly been 4 craft fairs, and I'm approaching 200 units sold. So that is strictly a
Wow.
craft fair game, and that's one of our best sellers, strictly at craft fairs. And then in the center, I have a Mint Tin game there. That's one of our very first Mint Tin games that was braced for impact. Those sell out really quick at craft fairs, and I'll get to this about pricing at craft fairs in a
I'm
minute.
just going to ask about pricing.
And then Elements was our first Kickstarter campaign, and those were some of the extra copies that we had purchased that we were trying to sell, and we sold out most of them at the convention.
Nice. Now, do people come through? Do they buy multiple games? Or are they kind of coming because they know what they want, or they're just
It
browsing? What does that generally
depends.
looks like? And do you ever do like multiple games? You get a deal if you buy
Oh yeah,
more things?
oh yeah, yeah. That's a great way to get multiple purchases.
Yeah,
A lot of
especially at like a
times,
$10 and $25 price point. I imagine that's
yeah.
a nice
So
thing to buy by
my
lot.
new thing now, and this is tough. So this is at a Christmas craft fair. So the catch with Christmas that I found, and you can see a lot of these games are self-manufactured. So you can see Elements is now in a tin rather than a box and stuff. I do $20 or less. Every game is $20 or less, and then there's promotions if you buy multiple things. And the tin games are $10, and those sell incredibly fast. They are great stocking stuffers. So there's a disconnect with local customers with what they can buy in a Target versus what they get in the indie market. They
Yeah, they're not
expect
buying
cheap.
$50 and $75 games.
No, they're not even buying $30 games, to be honest with you. $30 games are really hard to sell, right? Because the sweet spot is that $20 bill.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you can get 2 games for a $20 bill, you get 1 game for a $20 bill, that's the sweet spot. Even if you're at 25, that's a tough sell. This one was at another con, and you can see that we used up 2 tables. And I think there was a conversation. What size event are you talking? I stay away from conventions when I want to sell my games. If I want exposure, then I'll go to conventions. So typically these craft fairs are probably 500 to 1,000 people maybe come through.
And
Because
how many
they're
are you
also
selling, you
holiday.
think?
They're holiday craft fairs. I would assume that they're about 500 to 1,000 people. There might be more.
And then how many sales are you getting if you've got 500,000 people?
I will typically sell between $600 and $800 worth of product, and that's revenue.
Nice.
Which is not bad to move in a day. And that's on the high end. That's typically at holiday craft fairs. If you go to like a spring festival or a fall thing, you'll probably be around $300 to $500. But you also have to remember that I'm selling everything $20 or less, so I'm moving a ton of product.
Yeah. Somebody's asking about what your Etsy store link is, so I just want to pop it up here if I can.
So one of the tricks with Etsy is that the more stuff you have on there, it's kind of interesting. The more likely you are to get a sale.
Oh yeah, I usually don't buy stuff on Etsy because I searched for it. I usually searched for something else, but I was getting an idea for something, and then I found someone's store. And it's like, oh, look at all this cool stuff. And then you end up browsing.
Massive amount of sales for such a small amount. Selling that much at all the stalls. You know what? From the vendors that I've talked to, like jewelry vendors, sell even more than that. Like it's insane. So sometimes I've gone to events, and sometimes you strike out and you barely make booth. That's sort of the mark that I make, whether or not I go back to an event or not, is if I make back the booth fee and revenue. Typically booth fees are about $100 a day.
Yeah, and that's a good way to really measure anything, right? If you have a Kickstarter campaign and you're going to place an ad for $400, let's say an ad costs, how many games are you going to have to sell in order to make up that? And do you think that ad is going to make the difference of that many people buying your game? That's a great way to think about it in terms of units.
I suggest you start your store with a referral from someone, so you got some listings for free.
This is by Etsy. Okay.
Oh yeah, I do. So that is accurate. I do not use Etsy ads; they are a waste of money. I do offer free shipping because I have enough markup on them.
Now, but do you ship everywhere, or do you just ship US?
So the free shipping I offer is only for $35 or more, so that I get more exposure on Etsy. But I will say about 90% of my sales are below $35, so they always pay for shipping. Typically what happens is when somebody gets the free shipping, they're buying $60 or $70 worth of product, and then the shipping ends up being about $15. I'm able to absorb it a little bit better, but that is good advice. Like you don't want to, I don't offer free shipping at any price point. I only offer it through the Etsy free shipping qualifier so that I get better exposure on the Etsy site, if that makes sense. And it's
Gotcha.
helped, but Etsy ads are not worth it. I did an experiment where I spent $100 on Etsy ads and I got one sale and it wasn't worth it.
Gotcha. Let me see. I've
I'm kind of answering these as I see them.
No, that's okay. And I just did something weird where I zoomed in my screen and now I can't see half of the stuff. I think it's something with my mouse. I'm on a different computer, so I don't know what to do.
To
Anyway,
answer Catherine point about the 20K attendance thing. Yeah. So Christmas fairs, people are going to buy. They're looking for stocking stuffers.
gotcha. Okay, my screen is back. Sorry. For my Etsy store, I only ship to Canada and US with some free shipping built into the price.
That's smart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's smart.
I think I might know who that is. I can't see on StreamYard. I forgot to post a link so you can allow your profile picture if you haven't used StreamYard before. But yeah, I think that's smart. There's so much to think about with international shipping and with Brexit and all kinds of different things happening nowadays. Sometimes trying to do everything is what's paralyzing to us as small publishers. And if you can say, well, I can make 100 games, or I can ship things in the US. I know how tracking and things work in the US. Sometimes it's kind of nice, as we were talking about contests earlier, those constraints are almost kind of nice in getting stuff out as a publisher too. Let's see. Andrea, I have messaged you. I have a lot of stuff to do between now and UKGE, but would love to set up an Etsy afterwards. Okay, I think she's probably replying, or he or she is replying to Bez about their comment. I don't see the hierarchy. Let's see. Somebody's asking about after you run a Kickstarter and you sell all the production, do you run a second run to sell the game again?
I've had this discussion with my business partner, and he's very hesitant to run like another campaign, but we do more runs because we know we're going to sell them at craft fairs on it and on Etsy. So for example, 1159, we sold the last copy probably a year or two ago, the original, and we put in an order to make another 50 of them. And then when we sell those 50, we'll probably make another 50, but we don't go to the same capacity as like a Kickstarter. I won't make 500 of them, if that makes sense. But with the self-manufacture, it's easy to do 20, 50 at a time. And then the same deal, if I'm trying out a new game, I'll just make enough to make 10, and then I'll see how long it takes to sell 10.
Yeah. Sure. Now, do you number your things or put out different editions of them or anything like that? Or you just
sometimes, right? So like obviously I'll label it either Kickstarter edition or retail edition. Those are usually the two different types.
Yeah.
So
I have a feeling that we usually care more about those things than the buyers do, if you're not talking to hardcore collector type buyers. I know I'm kind of a perfectionist, is one of my personality flaws, so I'm always like, can I get all my boxes to be in the same, or all my games to be in the same box, and can they all look kind of the same, and should I number them?
I get it.
Regarding event fairs, do you maintain demographic data for repeat clients based on discount codes, etc.? So do you have like a master database of all your clients, or where is... If somebody called you up and said, hey, I'm Diane and I bought a game from you 3 years ago, do you have some way of looking up that person?
I don't. Kind of maybe. Like I use Square at craft fairs. So full disclosure, COVID obviously put it shut down the whole craft fair thing. So before COVID, I didn't have Etsy, and I used Square primarily, and I didn't really keep track of demographics and because I didn't sell online with Square at the time, I only did it at craft shows. I didn't have discount codes or anything. But now I can actually incorporate Etsy into Square. So when I do run a craft show, which I think I have one coming up in June, it's linked so that when I sell, it's like a small nominal fee, and then I get the sale credit on Etsy, and then I can use the shipping on Etsy and stuff like that if I need to, or just give it to the individual at the time. But I have not tracked demographics with craft fairs, because generally I assume that they're from the area.
The reason I ask is I have friends on the Ren circuit who tracked it and were able to run 6-figure businesses by sending event reminders to people who opted in for discounts, etc.
6 figures. Okay.
What is the Ren circuit? Am I...
Yeah, I'm a little lost here too, but
I'm thinking Renaissance fairs. I don't know what Random Circuit is. But I mean, data is a powerful thing
Oh
these
yeah,
days.
absolutely.
Having customer data, absolutely. If you've ever called up a restaurant and they know your name, like when they call, or when you call, or something like, or you call up a company and they know your name and they, oh, how is this thing that happened last time you called? That's worth a lot to people
Absolutely.
these days. And being able to, as you said, even just, well, you do have a little bit of customer knowledge, right? Because you are segmenting them a little bit, so you can go back and say who bought a sci-fi game before, or who bought a Minton game before. So maybe
Right.
it's not like one massive CRM, customer relationship management system, or something like that, that's more corporate, but you do a little bit of that, sounds like, in a grassroots way.
Yeah, I would agree. Did we get to all the questions that were presented before we came on here? I thought
Good
JT had a couple of them.
question. Yeah, let's yeah, so did we talk about your profit goals specifically? Do you want so
No,
we
so the way
fielded
he
some questions ahead of time. So he had asked, I know profit is important to you, as I've heard you talk about it plenty in the past. I'd like to know, what are your profit goals? You're happy to pay for itself? Do you want it to pay for a vacation once in a while? Do you want to quit your day job? What's your financial goal for Rampage Games right now?
well, Rampage Games has always been about fun. So
Mm-hmm.
the answer is, do
Fun
you
and
want the
money.
hobby to pay for itself?
Pay for
It's
itself.
basically, and it is right now, it runs itself. Actually, it
Yeah.
makes a little bit more money than it
Yeah.
uses. But we leave it in savings in case we want to do anything big, like if we want
So
to
do
get
you
a big
ever go into
collection
the
built.
red? That's a good question. Or are you pretty much always in the black?
Oh,
Put it in accounting
we
terms.
dipped a little into the red, like in the middle of the year when we did the Swearmints campaign, because I broke one of my golden rules and went overseas for the tins, and they came out disastrous, and I had to like then buy stickers and do them myself. And so
Disastrous. How do you mess up a Minton? Oh, like a
the
customized
the
Minton.
printing the printing was off, and they
I
printed
see.
upside down and they printed backwards,
Oh
and the
no.
colors
Were
were
you able to
off.
cover them with a label
I did.
and salvage them?
I did,
Nice.
but then I had to buy the
Nice.
labels. I was able to get a
Yes.
refund on the
Yes.
tins, which was good, and I was able to salvage the tins, and I bought the stickers. So I think we were just barely in the red. I think we were just barely in the red at one point in the year, but then we made it up with the Aurora Kickstarter, because we did the second Kickstarter later in the year. But almost,
Gotcha.
so I think almost every Kickstarter. Actually, no, I don't even think. I think the only reason why it was in the red, we were in the red, it wasn't the Kickstarter itself. The Kickstarter itself was in the black, if that makes sense. So every Kickstarter's been in the black. It's just all the other stuff that goes on to run the company,
Yeah,
like
like
the
overhead.
annual report fees and any prototypes and stuff like that. We were a little bit in the red, but then we ended up in the black at the end of the year, so we were okay.
Gotcha. So would you consider Rampage Games a job, a hobby, or maybe a jobby, somewhere in the middle?
It is a hobby. It is
It's a
100% a
hobby.
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 It is a
You
hobby that
mentioned
runs itself.
so you mentioned annual reports. Do you have a business incorporation and all that?
Yeah, LLC in New Hampshire.
So you
Yes,
do
I've
have
had
a
it since
business.
2012. No, 2009. I started doing
Gotcha.
taxes in 2012 because that's when I started selling stuff.
You start making money. That's the bad part about making money, right? Then you have
You have to
to
file
figure out
taxes.
all your
Yes.
taxes and things.
Yeah, and
Um,
then it's flow through, right? So then you get
mhm.
taxed, yeah, on whatever you make.
That could be a whole episode
I am a
chat in
CPA, so I
itself.
do my own taxes, which saves money.
Nice, nice. JT also asked, so he's kind of talking about the different levers we can play with as publishers, right? When looking at profit, you can cut costs, so you can make your games cheaper.
Uh-huh.
Um,
I've done that.
or basically cut costs, so not make them cheaper, like make the price cheaper, actually manufacture them in a cheaper, more efficient way so that
Hmm.
your costs are lower. You can sell new or premium things to customers, so you can
Hmm.
decrease your costs, you can increase the price, so therefore increase your income, or you can sell
Hmm.
more games, right? So we could do any combination of those three things. What is your approach
So
to selling, or do you have a specific approach?
I've done all three. I do self-manufacturing to cut costs, right? Because lower prices are always attractive to customers, and I can still maintain the profit margin I want. Sell newer premium things. One of my golden rules on Kickstarter is I always have a base version and a deluxe version, and a lot of the times backers buy more deluxe versions than base versions, and deluxe versions have more profit margin. So that I do that. And then finding new customers, I would argue I don't stick to a niche. I do games all over the place, and that brings in new customers. And then also, but beyond Kickstarter, I've also tried to grow the Etsy store and then go to craft fairs. So I get three different demographics. You get Kickstarter, Etsy, or I guess four. craft fairs and then the Game Crafter, because I still get random sales on the Game Crafter as well.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the Game Crafter too, because I think that's the one thing we haven't really touched base on. How does the Game Crafter fit into? I think most people watching this are probably familiar with the Game Crafter and what the capabilities are. How does that sort of dovetail into the other things that you're doing with manufacturing, with crowdfunding? Have you done a crowd sale, for instance?
Crowd sales, they're my mortal enemy. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with crowd sales. It's just you have to be incredibly diligent about bringing your own crowd. A lot more so than Kickstarter. So I think my first crowd sale was with Fiefdoms, which is a mint tin game. There's a little bit of disconnect with whether or not my rules were included or not in the game, which they were, but there's a little bit of disconnect there. So I didn't get a lot of backers. I got 33, but that was at the impulse buy mark. That was like under $10. And then the game I entered in your contest, Empires, I thought I had pretty decent interest in it, but I think it just, I didn't market it properly.
It's hard to gauge interest in the contest too, right? Because we all kind of are cheerleaders for each other's games too. And when you're voting and you're like, oh, I would buy that. Oh yeah, I would buy that. I would buy that. Yeah, I'm sure that there were like 10 that I put in my wish list. Yeah, during the last contest. But then it's like, I don't know if I'm actually gonna buy it. So it is easy to get overinflated and happy about it.
Yeah, it's okay. But what I will say is I have used, so for Aurora, Zombie Road, and Elements, which are the 3 Kickstarters that I did not self-manufacture, I used the Game Crafter BOF, and it couldn't have been an easier experience.
The bulk order fulfillment, I'm just looking into it now, and holy cow, that takes a lot of guesswork out of calculating shipping costs. And for anybody who doesn't know about it, just look into it. And there's a quick tutorial on their website where you can upload a sample spreadsheet that has all kinds of international addresses and it'll literally tell you how much it costs. So I did a price comparison between what it would cost to sell or to ship a game in like the small stout box. Or in the small, not that one.
Small Pro and Small Stout?
The Small Pro and Small Stout, because there's different shipping containers, and I entered them both and was able to see the price difference. Like, that's how much difference it's going to be.
So little tidbit of advice. The great thing about BOF that a lot of people don't realize is their international shipping is phenomenal with UPS Innovations. So when I run a Kickstarter campaign and I'm shipping to Australia, USP Mail Innovations will be like $15-20, but if I go through USPS on my own, it's like $50.
Wow.
So, because I've done the self, like I've gone through Backer Kit and I've printed out the shipping labels, and I sometimes eat cost on some of the international shipping, because like if they buy 3 or 4 games and you're shipping them, even if it has to go priority because it's over the weight limit of 4 pounds for first class, and then it ends up being like $70 just for one backer. That doesn't happen. It's few and far between, so you can absorb it. But when you go through the Game Crafter, the USPS or UPS Mail Innovations will make it so that just shipping like a mint tin game is only $10 to ship to Australia. So that is one of the hidden benefits that I like to stress, is that if you do a BOF, you can get really competitive international shipping.
Very cool. Somebody wants to know, is there a guide or a sort of checklist you can recommend to run a Kickstarter campaign?
Is there one I can recommend? I know there's a lot of good ones out there. What's it? Stonemeyer? Is that? Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, Jamie Stegmeyer has a great blog that may have, I don't know if a particular article, but I'm sure there's probably something on there.
Yeah, he's got a lot of good stuff.
I mean, there are a lot of checklists for Kickstarter. There really are.
See, at this point in the game, I've run enough of them. I know what works and what doesn't. So maybe I should make a checklist.
Yeah, I think there's like the checklist for what you actually have to do to go live, which you can learn if you just put in sort of like a dummy campaign, if you will, and put in your story and things. I create whenever I have a game and I think it's marketable, I'll just create a Google Doc and basically, why would somebody want to buy this? Here's the overview. Here's who we are. Like basically sort of a TGC shop page. I'll pop it into Kickstarter. I'll set a sort of a budget. I'll verify my identity and I'll just submit it. as if I were launching it, but I'm not. And then it'll get approved pretty quickly as long as you have some semblance of information there.
Right.
And then you can see the checklist of what needs to happen in order to launch that page. So if you're asking, like, what do you actually need in order to functionally run a Kickstarter page, the list is very short. But then there's the kind of like on the other end of the spectrum, there's this whole huge list of myths about how many addresses that you need, and how you need a video, and you need this many reviews, and you need to put in all this stuff. And there's a lot of these obstacles too. And somewhere in the middle is probably the right answer. I think that answer is maybe a little bit toward the, I'm mirror image, so I don't know which side I was pointing to, but I think it's a little bit more toward the bare minimum side for people like us who are maybe just hoping to sell a few hundred games, or maybe 1,000 games, but aren't shooting to raise $1 million on Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to see your list.
Yeah, so I have golden rules. Like, I knew when I started, I'll just list a few of them. I always sourced parts from the United States. I never went overseas. And the one time I broke that rule on the Swearman's campaign, Swearman's Pocket Pixel Artist campaign, it bit me. So
Mm-hmm. And that's
like,
logistical reasons, or financial reasons, or ethical reasons, or what are your, is that what makes that the golden rule for you?
I thought it would be cool to source everything, or at least source it. Doesn't mean it originally came from the United States,
Right.
but source it from American companies. That alone has allowed me to always fulfill early, because the shipping is days, not months.
It allows
So
us to be nimble, I guess, would be
exactly.
the
So
word.
there's
You know
that.
where it is. If you need more, you can say, send me 100 more, and you know it's not going to disappear for 3 months.
I always make sure I do at least 5 reviews, and I make sure most of them are video reviews. In most of my campaigns, I always have a base edition and a deluxe edition. Now that can tend to be more complicated. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for your first campaign. You kind of just want to, get kind of a following. But
What kind of things do you put in a deluxe edition?
Premium components. So, like,
Okay, so
if
upgraded components.
I were to show, like, if I were to compare Galaxy Dice, right? Like, so Galaxy Dice had like an expansion, so there are more play modes, and then it had the real metal arcade tokens upgraded from chit tokens, like chipboard chit tokens. Also had the holographic sticker on it. Came with a roll and write, so you get more premium product that you can signal more value and kind of get a little bit more of that margin.
So is this something that you set up, you've got A and then you've got B, or do you do the whole stretch goal thing where you've got all kinds of things to unlock?
Oh, I stay away from stretch goals. So I started with
Okay.
stretch goals, and a lot of the times it gives you more headaches than any backers that you would potentially get out of it. And a lot of times either the stretch goals are not well thought out, or even if they are, they're adding costs, cuts into your bottom line. And the way I set up Kickstarters are for them to be profitable on their own, not after I sell off extra stock. So I do stay away from stretch goals. Now, one of the problems with that is if you fund in a day or two, then the backers are just kind of along for the ride, right? So it's a choice you have to make for yourself. But at the other side of it, when you see those campaigns that are like, oh, funding goal is 5,000, and then when we get to 10,000, then 20,000, and then they really only get to 7,000, they don't unlock any of the goals. That doesn't look good either. So my rule of thumb is, if you are going to do stretch goals, don't post them ahead of time. Just say, first stretch goal is unlocked after we fund. And then depending on how fast you're funding, then you can set something reasonable. So if it took you 3 days to fund at 5,000, maybe make your next stretch goal at 6,000 or 7,000 instead of 10,000. But you give yourself that ability by not revealing it in the beginning, that you can kind of set the scale so that you keep the backers engaged and that nothing seems out of reach.
Yeah, and what I found, I have a lot of people tell me this, and I did find it even with my tiny little campaign. When I launched my Kickstarter, let's make sure I'm doing this in the right direction. So when I launched my Kickstarter, I got a whole bunch of backers the first day, and then it was kind of like fiddle up, and then I got a whole bunch like the last day. But it was really like a full 80 to 90% of my backers were like the first 48 hours and the last 48 hours. So I think, and I've heard that a lot, and I think that might be one of those myths that's worth listening to from experienced people, is that if you see your Kickstarter can go whoo, and you think, oh my gosh, I set my goal too low, I should have gone way higher because this is going to continue for 2 weeks, it's probably not. It's unless it's one of those magical things that happens where you go viral, which is usually more of a planned, calculated thing than a luck thing, I think.
So the old saying on Kickstarter was the rule of 3, where you get a third in your first 2 days, a third in the rest of the campaign, and a third in the last 2 days.
Yeah,
It's
I
kind of
found that to
morphed
be
a
true.
little. It's more
Okay, what do
about,
you find?
it's like 50, 20, 30, I would say now.
50, 20, 30. Okay.
I think you get a little bit more in the beginning than you do at the end. I would say it's closer, based on my last campaigns, it's about 50, 20, 30. I don't know. You
Yeah,
should go
that
back and look
does
at your
that
campaign and see if
I
that makes
should, because I
sense.
think that's probably, I was looking very generally at it. Basically, I got really excited the first couple days, things didn't happen in the middle, and then people came through at the end.
It gets really
But I
slow
think
in
I
the
think
middle.
what you're saying, the 50, 20, 30 is probably a little closer than the third. Excellent. Let's pop in the comments. Let's see.
Trying to catch up. It looks
What are
like
the
they had a
PO? Oh, I'm
conversation
sorry.
here.
So
Oh,
POF,
BOF.
BOF, bulk
Bulk
order
order fulfillment.
fulfillment.
Yeah.
Jinx.
Jinx.
If you go to the Game Crafter and look for bulk order fulfillment on their site, it'll pop up. And we're gonna have JT on in, I think, June, to talk a little
Oh,
bit
that's
more
gonna be
about some of these
great.
features, because my mind just keeps blowing every time I discover a new level of the Game Crafter. There's so many
Oh,
useful things. But what
yeah.
bulk order fulfillment is, in a nutshell, is you can run your Kickstarter, do your craft fairs, whatever. Let's say you now have a list of 100 people that want to buy your game, and you have their addresses, and you have how many they want. You put that in a spreadsheet, you upload it to the Game Crafter, and like 15 minutes later, they send you an email and says, here's your spreadsheet that estimates all the shipping. And if you press this button right here, if your game is made in the Game Crafter, we will make it and ship it to those people.
It's glorious.
Done.
It's
So you don't
glorious.
have to print shipping labels. You don't have to do any of that stuff. If you are like Chris, but also not a superhero, and you have less free time than he does, and you want to just make games and get them out, that is a really good option, I think, for a lot of people to look into. So bulk order fulfillment, BOF, on the Game Crafter.
I really can't endorse it enough. I've used it a couple of times, and it's really as simple. Like, it took me, I think, one campaign, probably 200 backers. So you got to realize that this isn't like a Nathan Kickstarter who did Doom Machine that had like 3,000 backers, right? So I only have to fill out a spreadsheet with 200 addresses. But
so you don't have to, let me interrupt you though. You don't have to fill out a spreadsheet. If you, for instance, had a Google form, which anybody can create for free, and a tablet at a craft fair or something like that, and somebody could just fill it out. I know when I was posting about Bah Humbug last year, all my friends and family were like, "When are we gonna get a copy of that game?" Whatever. I had no way to. I didn't have a Kickstarter page yet or anything. I just threw a Google form up in about 5 minutes, and I just sent it to him. I said, "Fill this out. I think this is probably what I need from you." And I looked back at that last month. I was like, "Holy cow! I have 40 games already spoken for."
Yeah.
Just because I put that up on social media, and with a little bit of tweaking, that's
right. That's what I
can be put up to BOF. Yeah.
So you get the Kickstarter output. You just have to kind of finagle it a little bit. It took me about 30 minutes to an hour to get it into the Game Crafter format that they require, because you have to match it to your game library and put in the zeros and ones.
Oh yes, that's
right.
true.
So that's the part that takes a little bit. But then it's as simple as clicking a button, like you said, and then you basically cut a check or pay with your credit card, and then they take care of everything, including customer service.
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
somebody says, "Where is my
they
game?"
may the backer may contact you, but you just tell the Game Crafter, "Hey, there's a problem." They take care of it.
Absolutely. And you can log in and kind of see where that order's at too, whether it's been fulfilled and those sorts of things.
Yeah, I can't recommend it enough. It's great, especially for first time campaigners.
Awesome. A couple more comments coming in. Frank West has a great set of Kickstarter lessons.
Oh, awesome.
Kings, which is great. Joe Slack for Kickstarter. Joe Slack's a great resource for a lot of things game related. He's written some books. Actually, one of the first things I did when I got into game design, I got one of his books for Christmas for my mother-in-law. She heard I was into game design. I learned so much. And I jumped to the board game design lab group, and I found that I was already light years ahead in terms of knowledge versus a lot of people for having read Joe Slack's book. So check out Joe Slack's stuff. And there's a bunch of other questions here, but I do want to make sure that these things don't turn into a huge long video every time, because I know when I go to rewatch the video and it's over an hour. Yeah, we're an hour. What I'm going to do is leave those comments. We can go back and keep the conversation going in the Facebook group. So again, if you're not in the Facebook group, you can join the conversation going on all the time there. And then this will get published to Facebook and hopefully to YouTube as well. If it goes to YouTube, I will put in timestamps, and you can be like me and you can watch it at 1.5 times speed if you want and jump through to the questions that you want answered, because I know it's harder to do that on Facebook. So I'll try to do that for you. Thank you so much, Chris. This has been great to talk about this, and thank you to all who have been commenting. I apologize that the pictures didn't show up for everybody. Next time I'll put a little link. You just have to allow StreamYard to look at your picture if you want to be identified. But yeah, I think this was fun. If you like it, give us a thumbs up. Let us know if there's somebody else that you think we should chat, or if you think you have some knowledge to offer, let us know. We'll try to schedule some more of these. This will be fun. Thank you all for helping us build a little community, and thanks so much to Chris.
Thank you.
Now let's see if I can figure out how to end the broadcast here. I'll play you my little small furry games hippie video, I guess. And I hope everybody has a great night. Bye.
Bye.